Throughout the Norwegian coast, you'll run into abandoned islands and places. Some of them have very tragic stories behind them, and some of them less tragic. This time we'll sail to a decrepit lighthouse, and after that to an abandoned island where 34 people lost their lives in a huge storm. We have now arrived to Oswego, and there is an abandoned pilot boat station here. The buildings are falling into disrepair. Also the dock itself is not very good. I wouldn't trust that in very high winds, but at the moment it's okay. Tomorrow we are probably gonna go and check out the 2 lighthouses over there. You have to take the dinghy to go there, and there is one old lighthouse which was destroyed in a storm, and then there is the newer one which is still operational, and they are both pretty big and both look pretty cool. And Sohvi is quite excited about lighthouses, so we are gonna go and check them out. Today it's sunny and we are going to go and check out the lighthouse. There's 2 lighthouses on Oswego, the new one and the old destroyed one. The old one was built in 1876, but it suffered major damage in 4 separate storms. Just 40 years later, after having been built, the lighthouse was already beyond repair, and the new lighthouse was built in a better spot. So now we are going to continue our journey south, and next up we are going to stay outside of the coastal area, so we are going to stay as close to the open sea as possible. And usually all of the boats go on the inside routes here. I'm just looking at the map on my laptop, but we are going to stay on the outside, and it gets a little bit complicated here. I have the pilot book here, and we have like a couple of archipelagos to go through. There are like these groups of islands, and the pilot book says, for example, yeah, this area is full of islands and rocks. It's almost impossible to go inside without local knowledge. And the other place, it says, yeah, during rough weather the whole sea is just a white mass of water here. And it's understandable if you look at the map, because it looks okay if you zoom out enough, but then when you zoom in, yeah, it's just full of these areas that dry out when the tide is at its lowest. But today we are gonna go to Sandsundvær, which is an island really far out on the sea. It's pretty much the furthest islands before the open ocean, and it is the place where they had a big tragedy around 100 years ago. There used to be at least a couple hundred fishermen and their families living on these small islands, they are like completely bare and low islands. And then there was a big storm, and basically the storm was so big that the waves swept over the islands, and 35 people, I think, died. And there is also a big Wikipedia page in Norwegian about this. I'll link it to you down in the description. You can maybe Google Translate it if you are interested. the sun was nice while it lasted, but now we are going through a group of islands here, one of those groups which were supposed to be quite hard to navigate through, and I guess in bad weather this would be kind of crappy, but right now it's okay. There are some markers here, but they are these rusty iron poles. They leave quite a bit open to interpretation as to what they mean. You know, normally they put them on the shallows, so it's best to keep away from them. I mean, obviously, you know, because they are stuck to the bottom, then it must be quite shallow where the poles are. But we just took the Genoa down as well, just to go a little bit slower. So only doing like 3 knots right now, and just taking it slow here. I checked this area on the satellite images earlier, and the route that we are taking now, it looks deep, and the reason that I checked the satellite images is that, you know, when you look at the electronic chart here, or even if you look at the printed sea chart, this area here hasn't really been any depth sounding done here, so it just says depth range minimum 0.5 meters and maximum 500 meters. So, you know, the depth is anywhere from 50 centimeters to 500 meters. That's a pretty safe bet. You know, if I were a cartographer, then I would also do that if I wasn't sure. So they just say, hey, this area, it's anywhere between 0.5 and 500. So at least the map is correct, but it's not very useful for us. 34 people lost their lives here in the year 1901 when the high spring tide combined with a big winter storm swept over the island. The houses, docks and boats were mostly destroyed and swept into the sea. It was the fishing season, so there were over 250 people fishing on the islands. The survivors clung on the ropes and chains that were tied to something more permanent. Many of the people who perished did not actually drown, but were hit and killed by the wreckage that was violently bouncing around in the waves. On a nice sunny day like this, it's almost impossible to imagine such event. The small wave breaker that you can see in the video is new, and it didn't exist back then. Today we are going to Brimstein, which is another abandoned island far out on the sea, and also on this one there used to be like a couple hundred people living here and fishing here, but now it's completely abandoned, although there are a few houses there that are rented as cottages or something. And it's, I don't know, like 30 miles out from the mainland. And the weather was supposed to be quite bad today, actually. It was supposed to be 20 knots of wind, and it was supposed to be a tight reach, but instead we've had maybe 10-12 knots and on a beam reach all the time. So pretty good. And we are actually almost there already. There are some buoys there that you can use, and we are probably trying to go all the way inside the small harbor, which is the most protected one. Let's see, it's a pretty narrow entrance to get there. Brimstein used to be a lively fishing island, but it was abandoned when the fishing boats became more advanced and faster, so that there was no need to live so close to the fishing grounds anymore. There are very few buildings left here, but this time the reason was not a storm, but the fact that as the people left the island, they disassembled their houses and boat sheds and took them with them. Wood is a scarce commodity in this part of the world. Thanks for watching. Next time we'll be spinnaker sailing to the island of Crete. And as always, you can support my small production on Patreon. The link is down below in the description. Huge thanks to all of my patrons so far. With your help, I was just able to get a new computer that makes editing much smoother. See you all next time. Bye bye.